Welcome in. Let's talk Broncos. Bri Maestas, Zach Segars. Listen, I just want to give a special shout out. There was someone in the comments of altitude adjustment this week who was worried and concerned about where I had disappeared off to. In fact, I'm not held captive in a basement. I am free, and life has just taken me by storm. So happy to be back, especially with Zach, because I didn't mean that to rhyme. Because we're back talking about Week 4 Denver Broncos. Zach, first and foremost, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back on with you talking some Broncos. Man, need a win this week, but I'm glad we're looking ahead and looks like it should be an easier opponent. Fingers crossed. So hoping the Broncos can take care of business.
Okay, that's the important part, though, that I think we do have to cover before we slingshot ourselves into the future. Because although week 3 is in the books, week 4 is right around the corner. It was an especially painful one. I think we need to dive into just a little bit about how tough that loss was against the Chargers, because I think it says a lot about where the team stands through 3 games. And then we have to look ahead to a primetime matchup that's just around the corner, but the team is no longer in the same sorts as they were as we were predicting this Broncos schedule and season. So quick shout out before we get rolling. Mario's travel vlog is up. The link is going to be in the description if you want to check it out. His game day shenanigans with a little weekend behind the scenes. I highly suggest that you take a look, watch that. Shout out to Hammer for the edits, Mario for his attempt at B-roll, which I think he did the best that he's actually able to. And I had a ton of fun watching that. So please, right after this one, go check that out because, it's good watches. Zach, did you go ahead and check that out?
It's amazing. And, credit to Mario for doing the travel, for filming it and putting it together, but huge tip of my cap to Hammer. I think his editing really makes those. So shout out to him for all the hard work he pulls into that. Adds so much character and energy to it. Those are must watches. So make sure you check those out. I'll make sure to, it's in the description of this video below. So click on that link.
Yeah, and again, I can't say it enough. Mario doesn't have to do the things that he does, but he does them out of the kindness of his heart. Mario, you can send $20 and vanity. Yeah, clicks, likes, comments, ats. Please at the man at the Tansy Therapy over on Twitter. All right, let's get rolling. That's enough of the highlights and the honors. We got to talk about it, right? How do we feel about the Broncos and the Chargers game? I quickly want to note that although it's been back-to-back heartbreaking losses, I don't necessarily think there's a lot to be concerned about. And I don't know if I just have the orange glasses on and I forgot to take them off at this point. But Zach and I were talking a little bit off of here of like maybe the concern is not so much like the ins and outs of who's to blame necessarily. Obviously, the Broncos are struggling in closing out games, specifically, close games. Walk-off field goals is a terrible notion. And that stat that we've seen floating around that the Broncos have failed to be behind in a game for 0 seconds? Like it's just
0 seconds trailing in the fourth quarter this season.
What you would think then that the team should be sitting at 3-0. They're not, though. Thanks to Indiana Jones, which I hate that I love that nickname. I hate it. I just am not a fan of it. It's like calling, what did I see? Josh Allen, the Winter Soldier. I'm out on it. It's great. It's cool. It's badass, but I'm not about it. So we sit here with a loss to Daniel Jones and the Colts, who are seemingly a pretty tough team now going into the season. They're figuring things out. Kudos to a Jonathan Taylor at running back. And then you have the Chargers, who we already expected were going to be a rough opponent. And the Broncos are sitting here at 1-2. Zach, what goes through your head when you think about this loss? We had a couple of days to reflect on it. We've probably come down back to earth a little bit. Are you feeling as less concerned as maybe I am?
I am in a similar boat. Now, I think that changes if they lose to the Bengals on Monday night. I think that's when you start worrying, are they digging too deep of a hole? I'm pretty optimistic that things will turn around down the stretch. I think it's going to follow a similar arc to all the Sean Payton seasons have followed in Denver. Slow September starts. Ryan Edwards highlighted this on KOA yesterday. He's the winningest coach in NFL history in October. He's got like a 75% winning percentage. And he's near 500 in September. That's been the story of all of his seasons in Denver. I think he's been 1-3, except for last year. I guess he was 2-2 because they beat the Raiders in week 4, if I remember correctly. And they could be 2-2 this time around. So 1-3, 2-2. That's the standard right now for these teams in September. Now, that's not good. That's something we should criticize and demand more of. You don't want to get off to those slow starts in September, but it gives me a lot of confidence that they'll turn things around, as does the easy schedule coming up. They've got the Bengals this week with Jake Browning. That figures to be an easier game there. Touchdown favorites, one of the bigger favorites of the weekend. That's followed up with a road trip to the Eagles. Hard game, absolutely. Then they get the Jets in London. They get Jackson Dart, was trying to think of the quarterback's name. Jackson Dart and the Giants at home. The worst defense in the league, the Dallas Cowboys at home. The 0-3 Houston Texans, who are the worst offense in the league right now by offensive success rate, on the road. That Colts game was much harder than everyone expected, but the trade-off, Texans game all of a sudden looks much easier than anyone thought it would be. The Cowboys game. After the Texans, you got the Raiders at home. And then it gets a little harder finally in mid-November with the Chiefs. But between now and mid-November, they probably play one truly difficult opponent, and that's the Eagles. They've got a great runway right here to get right.
Ooh, a runway. I feel like there's a little bit of a pun there as we approach that Jets game in London, which is going to be a little bit harder, I think, than we anticipate, simply because international games really don't bear positive vibes for anybody. And I think we have some PTSD left over from that. But the Giants coming to town, and I love how you struggled to find Jackson Dart's name. You just couldn't bullseye it right away. But the notion was we kind of knew Russell Wilson wasn't going to be starting at quarterback come this time of the season. So nothing really changes there with that anticipation. But yeah, I like the idea of the trade-off with the Texans looking a little bit outside of themselves. What I don't love is that the Broncos seem to be looking that same way. They just need to pull all three phases of the game together, because I think most fans feel like Denver let it slip away. And I think those reactions can have a little bit more frustration, because you start going back to the model of it's the same old mistakes over and over again. Red zone inefficiency, penalties, special team gaffes, all those things over and over again. They're self-inflicted. Because I don't feel like the Chargers dominated. They just capitalized on it. So if Denver wants to start getting some wins, they need to start really gaining them, and they can't keep giving them away. Zach, I know you were telling me about your factor here on where you're concerned, but if you needed to put it on a scale, because people love the ability to look at a panic meter and say, this is where I'm at, on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being I'm not so much concerned, but 10 being I'm super concerned, I'm at a 5. I feel like most of the Broncos country is in a little bit of a fever here, but I think that it's growing pains. I think that personally you see flashes of promise, but if the inconsistency keeps up, which I think, once we talk about a must-win game against the Chargers, and now we're talking about a Monday Night Football game that should be an easy win, we're right in the barometer spectrum. So a 5 feels like it's going to tilt either way. Give me a number where you think they are.
Ooh, I'm at a 4, or maybe even a 4 right now feels about right. I'm very disappointed with where they're at. I think they've dug themselves a bit of a hole. I felt good about them winning in week 2 going into that game, and week 3 going into that game. So I'm not counting any chickens before they hatch this time around. But ultimately, I am pretty confident that the ship will right itself. I think 2 of the games we've seen from Bo have been really concerning, but I do think that muddies the water from a week 2 performance that was pretty good. It wasn't like high level quarterbacking, but executed the offense at a high level, and as a result, he was 6th in the NFL in EPA per dropback, which that's all he needs to do. He doesn't have to do the advanced stuff on a regular basis. He just has to take the shots that are there when they're there. And I think this Bengals game is a good opportunity for him to build some confidence. And shout out Rick Lewis for making this point. It's one I've thought about myself. Teams will, surprisingly lose a game every year. Excuse me, my throat dried out on me. They'll lose a game you don't expect them to every year, but they'll also oftentimes win a game you won't expect them to every year. who's to say they don't surprisingly beat the Eagles or
Mm-hmm.
the Chiefs or the Packers? And I'd even say like the Chiefs and Packers games look very winnable now. I don't know what game you look at left on the schedule and just feels insurmountable. I mean, the Eagles, the
The
Packers,
Eagles.
and then the Chargers at home in week 18 are probably the ones you're most worried about. But with how the Chargers are trending right now, and you look at their schedule, they could get out to a crazy start like 11-1, 10-2, 10-2, or something like that. Maybe they're resting starters in week 18 and the Broncos get crazy lucky again. And that game's not even such a stiff challenge.
That is the parody of the NFL, right? I look at the schedule, I keep glancing at it over here, and I think the Eagles game is the one where I'm like, well, that's going to be a bloodbath. But I don't think that's necessarily written in stone. There is a hesitation and a reason for concern, which kind of begs the idea of like, okay, where's this team at, right? Roster wise, I feel like it's still in a rebuild. I was making the point, I think, in a different, channel, or I don't remember where it was, but there's a lack of that, not even just star power, right? But there's like a lack of this consistency as this roster continues to kind of find the direction it wants to go in. The Broncos are trying to build a run game. They're trying to take the pressure off of Bo Nix. They tried to add pieces on both sides of the ball that were going to help that, but they weren't going to guarantee that. I love J.K. Dobbins. I think the addition has been great for what they're trying to do, but it's not necessarily like, could you imagine just for a moment? I know we're a long way away from having Peyton Manning on the team, but let's say it's Bo Nix and it's a star running back. Now, Derrick Henry's having a rough go at it, especially with ball security, not job security, maybe, I don't know, ball security as it enters this season. But if you had a star running back that you knew was going to guarantee you the yards that you've been searching for, or you had that number one wide receiver, not just from a snaps perspective, but a guy who is going to immediately just add that consistency over and over again. And I know we all look to Cortland Sutton to be that individual, but if you had I'll say Mike Evans, simply because the guy is the root of consistency. He's a Hall of Famer given those circumstances. But I would say that the team in general and teams in general go from being where the Broncos are, intentional about their roster building, increasing that consistency, trying to find their identity when it comes to offense. But when you have that star power and you have those individuals on offense, when you start looking into targets and efficiency, it takes your game to a whole nother level. And that's still yet to be really discerned for the Broncos. And I know that Broncos country, I think, tends to lean in the I'm frustrated category because, there was a lot of hope that Evan Ingram coming back, who, as Zach had pointed out to me, Mike Kliss says he's back from the back injury. So it looks like he'll be practicing. I don't know yet about his availability. As we're speaking right now, the injury report is yet to be sent out. But I still feel like there's hope that will organically work itself out. And maybe it is J.K. Dobbins. Maybe it is an R.J. Harvey, but maybe it's not this season, it's next season. And that changes the identity of these teams who seem to struggle when it comes to closing out games, because you don't necessarily have to worry about what your red zone package is going to look like, or you don't have to have the conversations of the constant personnel turnover. So I think there's real positives here. I do want to turn that into a conversation, though, of fans have been loud about coaching. They've been loud about the mistakes. They've been loud about all of the personnel changes and how it doesn't allow this breadth of consistency to be built in. But that is part and parcel of the way this roster is presently structured. Zach, how are you taking what I'm saying in the inflection of there's not technically someone to blame here, at least from my perspective?
I think I'm meaner about it. I have a few people I blame. I think one, Sean Payton, I think absolutely deserves some blame. This is again a pattern he's had over the course of his career. These September slow starts, and consistently digs himself out of that hole. But I don't think that excuses the slow starts in September. You want to come out of the gates a little better than this, and I get the like Belichickian idea of, oh, your September's kind of an extended preseason. You're figuring out your team. And I think that's valid, but I don't think like the Broncos are losing games because they don't know their identity. They're losing it because of sloppiness. Um, and that is less excusable to me. So the Peyton stands out as one. Also, you look at like the special teams issues when they brought on a special teams coordinator overall for really no reason other than to get Peyton's buddy in there, and that's been so far a disaster. Like I think that's a big point of criticism. Nix's mechanics regressing. And Nix's poor play in general. I think Nix is the other big guy I would blame for sure, maybe even more so than Peyton. But Peyton is the head coach and quarter whisperer extraordinaire. The offensive Svengali. Yeah, he's got to figure out how to manage Bo Nix's mechanics or keep those from spiraling out of control so hard. That's maybe a little hyperbolic, but for just keeping him a little more on track so he's not doing these jump shots all the time. I mean, that's coaching at the end of the day. So though those two figures primarily to me stand out as like the general execution and like penalty and sloppiness errors. I think fall on Peyton. And then I think a lot of the offensive problems or passing game problems are on Bo.
Zach, I just wanted to hear it from your mouth live here on Let's Talk Broncos that you echo some of the things that I had concerns about to start this tenure. And I hope that they continue to gel with some consistency. My fear is that we continuously see not just the slow start, but I think the inability to reel it in quickly enough, because although a couple of losses here or there aren't necessarily the end of the world, I think they do matter, especially when the AFC West is as contentious as it is, and a must-win game at the end of September maybe doesn't sound too hyperbolic, but you really are putting yourself into a position where the struggle is real and the sloppiness is a fantastic point, because if it is as apparent as it is on a television screen or when you're watching the All 22, I think it very much so is a screaming factor within the team and within those meetings that they have. So it'll be interesting. I felt a little bit of guilt. I felt as though I had maybe gaslit myself into having so much optimism, but I see the direction. I'm frustrated with the execution. I have to agree that I had some concerns about the way in which people are put into positions within the organization and how that has come to a reflection. And I miss the previous, I kind of miss the previous entities that we had in place, whether it be Morton or Westhoff. Like you start saying like things that were working and maybe weren't a problem are now highlighting as a problem. So it'll be interesting. I obviously can't wait to see how that works itself out at the end of the season. If we're still in the sorts of being excited for a wild card push, whatever it may be. It is young. It is the first quarter of the season. I am incredibly nervous for Monday Night Football, which leads me to the one glowing factor that I can speak with it with certainty is that it's going to be nice to have a primetime game. And looks like the Midnight Navy are being debuted. Have we gotten any confirmation on the helmet pant combination? I feel like that's a lot more important to people than I respected.
For a little peek behind the curtain, you and I are pre-recording this on Thursday, but we haven't gotten like photos from practice or anything yet. Once we get those live practice reports with the photos of the helmets, we should know, because they have to break in the helmets all week. I hope it's not the white helmets. I can live with it if they do the white helmets, but it needs to be the white pants. If so, this idea of like the white tops and all dark, it looks goofy. When the Chargers do it, it looks goofy. When any NFL team does it, and there's plenty that do it, it looks goofy. If you have like a white helmet and even just like some white pants or something, just to balance it out, it works. It can look cool. I would prefer the all navy out if we're going to try and go for like the dark navy, the night what did the social
Midnight
account
Navy.
like?
Midnight
Night
Navy.
edition or something. It's
Yeah.
Midnight Navy the color, but they tweeted something like night mode. Night mode, that's what it was.
Oh,
If you're
night
going for
mode.
that, let's it's not very night mode, an all white helmet. That's my opinion. So let's go all navy, navy out. And then it works perfect too because the Bengals can do like their white out uniforms, and then you get
that would look clean.
I think that's a great uniform clash on prime time under the lights. Give us that.
Is that what the kids say? The drip, it would be clean. Do they still say clean? I don't know. Anyway,
you're asking the wrong person, Bri. I'm officially old. I'm on.
You're officially an adult. You can't be drafted. Can you?
Almost.
No.
Almost.
Oh,
wait. Am I good? What's draft age?
You should Google that right now. I was going to say if they did the all navy, it's going to look amazing. I hear you on the balancing out point, but I love the point where if you said, night mode, but with a white helmet is almost like when somebody flashes you their phone and they're on day mode and it's just like white screen, white text, terrible. Did you clear?
So I can't be drafted. I'm cool. Which I'm now reminded. My birthday's August 5th. Like the end of July is when stuff was getting really, really toasty about like, man, are we gonna have a conflict? And man, I was like, we just got to hold out like one more week, please. And I've made it.
You did.
Ooh.
I'm so proud of you. You don't have to fake bone Spurs. By the way, everyone does. I'm a little nervous today. Not a sponsor, but if you like Aaron's thinking putty, I highly recommend this. There we go. Pirates Cove. Give it a try. It is making my day easier. All right. Jerseys aside, we don't have the full injury report at this time because Zach already let you know we're a little bit early recording this. But let's jump into it. Week 4 preview: Bengals at Broncos for Monday Night Football. The elephant in the room. Zach, without Joe Burrow, which Bengals matchup still worries you? Because I think there's still a lot left to be out there, but Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are still dangerous no matter what. So it doesn't matter if Jake Browning's throwing the ball, but I feel like fans on Twitter are already debating whether or not Patrick Surtain should shadow Chase all game. I think it's the explosive matchup. What's worrying you?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. And Surtain's kind of where I'm worried. I think people have wrongly been really on Riley Moss, and I didn't comment on it so much in the post game because I was like, maybe I missed something. Like I definitely heard his name called some today. Maybe it was a rep game for him. He was targeted 12 times and allowed 4 completions. He also had you have the game-winning touchdown that comes on him. That's a good coverage play by him. Like it's a scramble drill where Keenan Allen alters his route late. Riley Moss still has good coverage on the play, which is hard to do. And it's just a perfectly placed ball by Herbert. There's Moss swats at it. He's barely off. And that's that. I don't think you really knock Moss too hard for that. Surtain, on the other hand, over the past 2 weeks, ever since we saw him grab his ankle in that Colts game, he's been targeted a good bit and he's allowed a good number of completions. I think the numbers look a little worse because of that missed tackle him and Singleton had early in the game, but still this past week, but still it's been a rough, relatively speaking, rough couple of weeks for Pat Surtain. And that said, even if I think Riley Moss doesn't deserve the criticism he's been getting, T. Higgins is the toughest matchup any number 2 cornerback can draw. So this is the toughest test he'll see all season. So he's going to be tested. Surtain, I wonder if he's wounded right now. You're maybe not getting the best version of him. That's something I'm mildly worried about. And then you've got Chase Brown, who I think is a really dangerous receiving running back, a smaller guy who, isn't that deadly between the tackles, but man, you get him out in space in the passing game, he can really kill you. And then you've got, and we've seen those like uncovered routes to running backs really kill the Broncos multiple times this season. And on top of that, you've got Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki at tight end, who are athletic options that should give these Broncos linebackers a hard time. So I'm really curious how the coverage unit holds up, especially because this Bengals offensive line is deeply suspect and should be exploitable by this Broncos pass rush.
Let's flip it and let's talk about the Bengals defense a little bit because you have Trey Hendrickson just eking around the corner. But I want to point out, only got 2 sacks on the season. There's question marks of whether or not he'll be included in a trade somewhere else. But the Broncos O-line seems to be grading out pretty decently when it comes to opposing defenses. Is that a matchup that might concern you at any turn? I feel like there's a question mark when it comes to the O-line as a unit. But I think that has more to do with just the slow start to the run game, and maybe there being just a little bit of a tendency for an overreaction. I'm not too worried about Trey Hendrickson, but I'm worried about maybe possibly there being someone on the Bengals defense that's going to create a little bit of a glaring hole.
Yeah, and I think that Bengals pass rush is what you have to worry about. I think Shamar Stewart has looked solid so far with what we've seen. Trey Hendrickson, you said, is good. But I'm with you. I wouldn't be that worried about them in pass protection because we've seen this Broncos offensive line really hold up well still there. I think Sean Payton, for his flaws, I think the reason the run game success isn't what you expect given like the pass protection. So many people see how good the pass protection is. They go, why is this not? Oh, I accidentally muted myself. Why isn't this working in the run game? Why isn't this working, in terms of run blocking? And I think it's in part because Sean Payton does a great job protecting his offensive line or inflating his offensive line's performance with his pass game design. And I think that's harder to do with the run game. So yeah, I just think it's a fine offensive line. I'm not worried about them holding up in pass protection. There's seriously a problem with getting this run game going, though. I think they need to draft a center early next year. My early prediction for first round pick would be Auburn center Connor Liu. I think that if I'm trying to call my shot early here, I think that's the direction they go. They could really use a guy like that, in my opinion, and it would just do dividends for their run game. For now, though, I think they have to hope to take advantage of weaker run defenses, and luckily for them, the Bengals project to be that.
I think we should clip this so that we have it available for the future. Like it's September and we need to write this timestamp down because I love that call out and I hope that it comes to fruition wherever we may land. I do want to point to primetime in general makes me nervous. You're in the spotlight. Thankfully, it's a doubleheader. So there's a game starting right an hour before Broncos country kicks off. So I know everyone wants to feel good here. I know there's a should be a win situation, but there's a little bit of scarring going on. We've seen Denver, stumble in almost this exact kind of should win game before. So my confidence is medium high. I think it's a straightforward formula though. You gotta figure out how to run the ball effectively. And you talked about just why that just doesn't seem to happen. You can't let Jamar Chase break the bank. That's your number one prerogative. And I think if they check those boxes, I think they'll walk away with it. But Zach, let's say worst case scenario, because that's what I do here. Let's say the Broncos lose this one. They fall to 1-3. Does the panic surge? Because I feel like alarms could really go off. I think that fans could start to conflate this with rock bottom. And I think losing to a Burrow-less Bengals team at home in prime time is kind of the bottom of the hill. So it would be emotional panic and it would be math, which I'm not great at. But to me, that sounds like you're down pretty bad. Can you overcome that? And is it terrible to talk about the what ifs if that's what happens? Because I'm past the point of must win games. Where are you?
Yeah, I think this is a must win, but they can dig out of it. It would put themselves in a bad hole, but we saw the Russell Wilson Broncos under Sean Payton start the year 1-5. And then, if they take care of business over those last 2-3 games of the season, they make the playoffs that year. Now, very few teams have dug out of such a hole. It's not likely to dig out of such a hole and ultimately make the postseason, but it would be achievable. 1-3, that's one thing. The problem is it's 1-3, and then you have that road contest against the Eagles the very next week, so it'd feel like 1-4 in a way. That said, again, you look at that upcoming schedule: Jets, Giants, Cowboys, Texans, Raiders, Chiefs, Commanders is the first team in that stretch outside the Eagles with multiple wins this season. Raiders again, Packers, I guess that's a little troubling. Jaguars, maybe based on what we've seen so far. Chiefs again, and Chargers. It's definitely, I guess, a harder close to the season. But that soft middle stretch should give you, even if they are in a 1-4 hole, that should help them get back to 6-6, something like that. And at that point, you have to take care of business down the stretch against that harder slate, but you'll be back in the mix, and with enough divisional games left that you could absolutely turn around your fate and get into the postseason. You just leave yourself little to no margin for error at that point. And losing these 2 games they should have won, they've already burned a good hunk of their margin for error.
Love it. I think we do need to do I think we do need to give a little bit of a prediction before we get out of here. And I was just trying to figure out what mine could possibly be. I think the Denver Broncos are favored by 7.5 as it presently stands. The over-under is at 44 points. I don't know. The Bengals had a tough time against the Minnesota Vikings, which means they're going to have a very tough time against the Denver Broncos if the defense is on one, which I think bodes well for the Broncos. I think that Joe Burrow really makes this team, and I think that the Bengals will struggle even with the Browning-Chase combination. I want to say that the score is going to be, I would take the over there, but I'm trying to formulate what I think the most scary, like a 27-24 Broncos win would be so scary. Like, why are the Bengals keeping it close? Why is this why is this not a convincing win? So I think I have to go in that direction just so I can be proven wrong and keep losing this darn score prediction game that we keep playing. So I gotta go 27-24. Broncos eke it out. They flip the script. It's a late 4th quarter field goal.
I like it. I certainly hope you're right with the win. I hope you're wrong in terms of how close and stressful the game is. I am going with a Broncos win 2. I'm thinking the Broncos win this one 27-13, like your 27 number. I think the Bengals are not going to score a lot of points in this game. I don't think they have many avenues to score points in this game. Because I think Browning's going to be under a lot of pressure. I don't think he's a quarterback who performs great under pressure. And this Bengals offense is the worst rushing attack in the league so far this season. So even if that's the defense's relative weakness, I don't think the Bengals can exploit it that much. So I think Bengals are going to struggle to score. And I think this is you're coming home under the bright lights a mile high. I think this is a perfect get right spot for the offense. 27-13 Broncos W.
Yeah, and as far as I like yours better. I'm just gonna be generic and say that, like, I probably should always concede to Zach when it comes to this, and he's lucky that I'm feeling so,
You're beating me this
forthcoming. Am I really? Because I feel like I am at the floor of this.
I haven't calculated last week yet, but through 2 weeks you were ahead of me. I'm not doing too hot this season.
It's abhorrent. I'm worried about bold predictions. I usually have like this sixth sense for stuff like this, and I just feel like I keep either not being bold enough, or I just am not getting credit for where credit is due. Something's fucky when it comes to the NFL record keeping, and I just want to throw that out there. I want to say the Broncos get 4 turnovers, though. However that may shake out, I think they're going to unsettle the heck out of the Bengals. And I don't care how that stacks up, but you have to say you appreciate how much Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper show out, because when one's getting held to death, the other one's gunning, and they're going to start connecting. And it's going to be a Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware sort of perfect storm kind of defense. That's why I think I'm so high on this team, is I'm like, yes, but they're still outperforming. Then you can't discount or discredit, even though Zach Allen kind of went a little bit ghost here this last game. You still have this tremendous pressure. You have Jonah Ellis, who is just absolutely on fire. And I feel like those guys are really going to lead the charge when it comes to creating momentum changes. So at the end of the day, if the offense is maybe struggling a little bit, or you have to make up for special teams gaffes or what have you, you know that the defense, even through exhaustion, is going to continuously make plays. And I feel like this is a good game, right? Like, you are going to have to unsettle the entirety of the team. You're going to have to shake Jake Browning to his core, and he's going to be seeing ghosts and ghouls until past Halloween.
You're gonna be like Charlie Day. I am a big fan of that prediction. I think there's a good chance it comes to fruition. I'll also go with the defensive one. I'll say Jamar Chase does not score a touchdown and is held under 50 receiving yards. I think bounce back game for PS2.
Terrible for all of my fantasy leagues, as he has been the one shining star, and well, we know how that's turning out. Oh, well. It's been a fantastic show with you, Zach. Thank you for jumping on with me. Here we are, Broncos country, sitting 1-2 with a chance to even it up under the lights. Midnight Navy uniforms, Surtain versus Chase, and Bo Nix continuing his growth. Plenty of storylines for Monday Night Football. Don't forget, we'll have Full Phil Reed on Saturday, which will be a midday show. Maybe you'll get some betting and fantasy angles as well when you tune in. And then as far as everything else goes, we will see you next week. Broncos country, buckle in. Monday is a chance, I guess, to change the narrative or to hit the panic button, whatever way it goes. Last but not least, go Broncos.